Hey guys, tonight we travel back, way back, to a time when sandals slapped dusty roads, olive oil doubled as shampoo and salad dressing, and your job might involve dodging geese or carrying flaming torches through wine cellars. You're heading to a Roman villa, yes, a kind of countryside palace, but not the spa retreat fantasy you're picturing. More like a rural machine of sweat, hierarchy, and surprise duck attacks. You've just been hired. And surprise, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive by cart, bumpy, splintery, and suspiciously damp in one corner, at the Villa Rustica, the working part of a Roman estate. It's not a single building but a sprawling complex of wings, outbuildings, granaries, vineyards, and dusty animal pens. The air smells like hay, hot stone, and whatever passed for soap 2,000 years ago. As you climb down and stretch, a house slave eyes you like a piece of slightly bruised fruit. You're given no orientation, no map, and definitely no lunch break. Welcome to the villa. Roman villas weren't just fancy homes for the elite. They were industrial-scale operations, built for producing wine, olive oil, wheat, wool, and sometimes even fish sauce. Think, Downton Abbey meets a farmer's market with very strict social rules and a mild chance of exile. This one belongs to a mid-ranking senator who visits only during the spring festival and harvest feasts. The rest of the year, it runs on the backs of hundreds of workers, some free, many enslaved, who make sure the dominus never has to wait too long for imported cheese or peach-scented perfume. The moment you pass the threshold, you're just another cog. A replaceable, underfed, probably sunburnt cog. Inside the atrium, a half-naked boy throws a bucket of water across the mosaic floor, misses the dust, hits your sandals. You step past him into a sunlit corridor flanked by flaking frescoes of gods and blurry mythological beasts. One looks suspiciously like an octopus with arms. You're told to make yourself useful. No hint as to how. A cook races past, muttering about spoiled figs. A servant argues with a goat blocking the doorway. Somewhere, a woman screams, and no one reacts. Classic villa background noise. Over the next few hours, you discover the place is split into clear zones. The Pars Urbana is where the Dominus and his family would stay. Gleaming marble, delicate wall paintings, and precious silverware you're not allowed to breathe near. The Pars Rustica is for work, stables, kitchens, granaries, and an olive press with a suspicious red stain that no one talks about. And then there's the Pars Fructuaria, storage and processing. That's where the real magic happens. Well, if you count fermenting cabbage and wrangling chickens as magic. You're paired with an older slave named Horatius, who calls everyone boy, even the 40-year-old bath attendant. He shows you around in grunts and shrugs, pointing out important details like, "Don't eat that fig tree, it belongs to the gods," and "Avoid that well, it echoes weird." Historians still argue whether villas like these were symbols of Roman luxury or just well-decorated sweatshops. Some say they reflect the elegance of Roman engineering and lifestyle. Others focus on the backbreaking labor and the inescapable reality of the enslaved workforce. Both are true, depending on which side of the curtain you're stuck on. You make your way to the vineyard just in time to watch someone tumble into a wine vat. No one helps. Horatius just mutters, "He'll learn." It's unclear if this is encouragement or prophecy. As you wander past the terrace fields, you realize that every inch of land is engineered for productivity. Romans didn't mess around with random gardens. Trees are spaced with mathematical precision. Olive groves sit on slopes to catch sunlight and drain better. Ducks, yes, ducks, are housed near the aqueduct runoff, not because they're cute, but because they eat pests and fertilize soil. Also, because some senator's aunt thinks they're sacred. And then there are the people. So many people. You spot over 30 workers before lunch, most with specific roles, titles, and varying levels of eye roll when they're told what to do. Everyone is judged on output. A slow grape picker might be reassigned to latrine duty, which, yes, is exactly what it sounds like. There are also free laborers called coloni, tenant farmers who rent land from the dominus. They don't live inside the villa but in small huts nearby. They're technically not slaves, but they're not exactly thriving either. Their children often end up in villa jobs, and their futures involve more dust and fewer teeth. The villa runs on a strict schedule, sunrise to sundown. No weekends, no sick days, and absolutely no backtalk. Punishments are creative, ranging from being assigned night goose patrol to hauling amphorae up and down stairs that mysteriously multiply after dark. But there's beauty, too. At dusk, the scent of lavender drifts in from the herb garden. Lanterns flicker along colonnades. The stone pathways glow warm and golden. Someone's playing a reed flute by the slave quarters, the notes weaving through the olive trees like smoke. For a moment it feels almost peaceful. Then a donkey breaks wind so loudly it echoes off the bathhouse, and someone curses in Greek. You learn fast here. Where to stand when the cook is throwing ladles. How to carry 2 buckets of oil without spilling any on the floor mosaics. Which corners to avoid during high wind because of the incident. And as you collapse onto a straw mat at night, no pillow, just an itchy roll of wool, you realize this place isn't just a workplace. It's a world. A living, breathing engine of Roman ambition and exploitation, tied together with rituals, routine, and a shocking amount of goose droppings. Tomorrow, you'll meet the man behind it all, the Dominus himself. Word is, he's arriving early. Which means double chores, triple stress, and very possibly, someone gets blamed for a missing amphora that wasn't missing until just now. Sleep tight. At sunrise, the villa shifts gears. Workers spill from side buildings like ants from a disturbed nest. Brooms sweep, fires crackle, and a donkey stubbornly refuses to move until bribed with half an apple. The air smells like charcoal, wet limestone, and just a whisper of goat. Today is different. There's a nervous edge in the wind. The Dominus is arriving. You don't meet him right away. First, everything must gleam. Tables polished, cushions fluffed, and the statue of Minerva in the entryway must have the bird poop scrubbed from her nose. You're handed a rag and pointed at a corner fresco depicting Bacchus mid-wine bender. Your job is to make his grapes shine. The Dominus doesn't live here full-time. He has a townhouse in Rome, near the Forum, where he attends Senate meetings, hosts banquets, and probably complains about how no one delivers fresh anchovies fast enough anymore. But several times a year, he comes to his countryside villa, part vacation, part inspection, and part divine visitation. When he does, everything changes. Because the Dominus isn't just your boss, he's the sun around which this strange little solar system spins. He arrives by litter, of course, carried by 4 sweating men with calves like amphorae. His tunic is dazzling white, his sandals are clean, for now, and his voice rings out like he's addressing Jupiter himself. Ah, the countryside! Smells like freedom and fertilizer! You're ordered to line up with the other workers as he passes, nodding and murmuring the appropriate Salve, Domini. He doesn't notice you, of course. You are officially beneath his radar, unless you drop something or set something on fire. The Dominus is more than a figurehead. He owns everything you see, the vineyards, the olive groves, the livestock, the buildings, the barrels of garum, fermented fish sauce, aka the ketchup of the gods. He may even own you, if you're one of the enslaved workers. The legal term is res a thing. Try not to dwell on it. But he's also responsible. If the villa fails, if crops rot or wine spoils, his status in Rome takes a hit. Wealth and honor are symbiotic here. So he inspects everything, runs a finger along the ledgers, lifts a jug of olive oil to the light, swirls a cup of wine like he's auditioning for sommelier school. Today, he claps the steward on the back and says, "Very good, Villicus. Better than last autumn. That time I got food poisoning from a spoiled date." A joke, probably. Probably. Historians still argue whether Dominus figures like him were genuinely involved in estate management, or just ceremonial overlords who showed up to criticize things and then left for another banquet. Evidence suggests a range. Some micromanaged, some barely knew where their fields were. Your Dominus? He's hands-on enough to demand duck-egg custard, but not enough to know how ducks actually work. He retires to the triclinium, the formal dining room, where slaves arrange an elaborate midday meal. You're not allowed near the triclinium, unless you're delivering something, and even then, only if your tunic is clean, your hands are washed, and your eyes stay very respectfully downward. You find a spot in the shade, near the edge of the herb garden, where bees buzz and the rosemary smells like burnt pine needles. From here, you hear fragments of the Dominus's conversation. Must increase olive yields this year. Thinking of acquiring more land near Capua. And tell the Duck-Wrangler I want twice as many eggs by Saturnalia. Twice as many eggs? Per Duck-Wrangler. You make a mental note to avoid that guy today. The Dominus eats for an hour, cold meats, fruit, bread dipped in olive oil so green it practically glows. Then he naps. And yes, everyone must be silent while he naps. Even the animals are herded away from his wing of the villa. The last time a goat bleated near his window during rest time, it ended up in stew. When he wakes, he walks the estate. You're ordered to follow, not directly, but sort of off to the side in case you're needed to open a gate or retrieve something he drops. He asks questions about irrigation, crop rotation, and why the east-facing vineyard hasn't been producing as well. The Villicus tries to explain about last season's hailstorm, but the Dominus waves it off and recommends sacrificing a chicken. Just in case. Here's the thing, the Dominus lives in two worlds. In Rome, he's a senator, maybe even a priest of some minor deity. He dines with generals and debates in the Curia. Here, he's a god-king of dirt and ducks. He expects loyalty, deference, and that his bathwater be the perfect temperature, always. You get a glimpse of his private chambers. Marble floors, delicate wall art, and shelves stacked with scrolls he probably hasn't read. There's a writing desk where he occasionally drafts letters or pretends to. A flute rests nearby, untouched. He once played it after a successful harvest. It sounded like a goose trying to do math. He demands updates on every part of the villa. How many loaves are baked each week? How many sheep were shorn? Whether the wine barrels have been properly rotated. Every worker's effort, yours included, is reduced to numbers and summaries delivered by the Villicus, the steward. Occasionally, the Dominus will single someone out, usually for praise, rarely for punishment. He once had a kitchen slave whipped for oversalting his fish. But today, he calls out the laundry team for delivering perfectly bleached togas. They blush, bow, and immediately get back to soaking fabric in fermented urine. Ah, glory! As sunset approaches, the Dominus retires again, this time for a bath. Heated from beneath using a clever hypocaust system that's always just one bad charcoal load away from turning the caldarium into a smokehouse. You're not allowed inside, but rumor has it he sings in there. Loudly. Off-key. The sky turns violet. The villa exhales. You watch as the Dominus strolls the courtyard one last time, nodding, satisfied, for now. You, meanwhile, trudge back to your quarters, where someone is trying to boil lentils over a fire that won't light. You sit, rub your aching feet, and try to forget the part where the Dominus's final words of the day were. Someone check if the duck pond smells different. That someone? Probably going to be you. You don't see the Villicus at first, just hear his voice echoing off stone walls, snapping orders like sling stones. Check the grain count. Scrape the barn doors. And who left a turnip in the wine press? By the time you reach the courtyard, he's already made 3 people cry and has the ledgers tucked under one arm like a scroll-wielding thunder god. This is your first real introduction to the man who, let's be honest, actually runs this place, the steward, or Villicus. While the Dominus owns everything, the Villicus operates it. He's the one the workers fear, respect, or resent, often all at once. And if the Dominus is Jupiter, then the Villicus is Mercury with a clipboard and no patience for excuses. The man himself is wiry, sun-toughened, with a tunic so spotless you wonder if it's enchanted. He's not noble, not rich, and not technically free. Many Villasai were slaves, just ones given terrifying responsibility. If he messes up, he doesn't lose a promotion, he might lose a toe. Or worse, his position. Which, in villa terms, is like falling off Olympus straight into the latrines. You're assigned to shadow him today. No pressure. From the moment the sun crests the terracotta roof tiles, the villicus is already 10 steps ahead. He walks the perimeter like a general inspecting his troops. The first stop is the granary. He opens a heavy wooden door, sniffs the air, and mutters, "Too damp. Who watered the threshold again? Are we growing bread mold now?" Inside, the grain is stored in massive clay jars sealed with wax and cloth. You help him count, even though you can barely keep up. He flicks the side of each jar and listens, like a baker whispering to dough. Occasionally, he makes a note with a stub of charcoal on a wax tablet, and you feel vaguely impressed and deeply afraid. Historians still argue whether the villicus had true managerial authority, or was just a mouthpiece for the dominus. But Roman legal texts suggest the role was powerful, entrusted with discipline, supply chains, and even hiring decisions. In a way, the villicus is the ancient version of a COO, Chief Olive Officer. Next, he stops by the wine cellars. Long, cool, and full of massive amphorae sealed with resin, the cellars are half storage, half sacred temple. A miscount here could mean disaster. You watch him lift a lid, dip a ladle, sip, and grunt approvingly. Then he hands it to you. You take a cautious sip. It's tart, earthy, with a weirdly smoky aftertaste. "Tastes like old sandals?" "Exactly," he says. "A good year." He keeps moving, now to the stables. The horses snort and stamp as he inspects their hooves, adjusts their harnesses, and scolds a boy for storing a currycomb upside down. You're handed a shovel. For a moment, you think it's for general assistance. It's not. Afterwards, you both pass through the olive groves. The villicus knows every tree by sight. He even names a few, oddly, most of them women's names. "That one's Julia, she gives 3 amphorae a year. This one? Claudia. She's stingy." You nod, trying not to get emotionally attached to fruit trees. And then the ledgers. Back in his small office near the center of the villa complex, the villicus sits at a desk stacked with wax tablets and scrolls. Numbers, names, weights, harvest logs. He scratches figures, adjusts margins, and occasionally sighs like a man being haunted by barley quotas. You stand nearby, mostly in awe. You ask softly if he ever sleeps. He chuckles, low and bitter. "When I'm dead. Or when the Dominus forgets we exist." You learn more in an hour than you did in your first week. How a sudden storm can destroy a season's profit. Why storing oil in cracked amphorae is worse than storing it in a gossiping cook's pantry. And that even ducks need to be accounted for, by age, gender, and production rate. Fringe fact: one Roman villa manual actually recommends feeding ducks chopped lettuce and wine-soaked bread during cold months to keep their egg yield high. This might explain why villa ducks are slightly tipsy and fully chaotic. The villicus isn't just managing goods, he's managing people. You watch him handle 3 minor crises before lunch: a broken cart axle, a dispute over grain rations, and a boy who swears the sheep. No Latin. He deals with each swiftly, fairly, and with just enough sarcasm to let everyone know he's had it up to here with human nonsense. He pulls you aside. "Here's the truth. You want to survive in this place? Learn what people won't say. Listen to the silences. They scream louder than the chickens." You nod like that makes sense, though you're still thinking about drunk ducks. After lunch, dried figs and a terrifyingly crunchy barley biscuit, the villicus checks in on the artisans, potters, smiths, and weavers all tucked into a workshop wing near the back of the villa. A smith complains about a shortage of copper. A weaver asks for more thread. The villicus does the math in his head, says, "I'll get it from the Capua's shipment," and moves on before anyone can ask him for a raise. Not that raises exist here. You start to realize something odd. The villicus likes order. He thrives in it. Without it, the whole machine collapses. He's the beating heart of the villa, not glamorous, but absolutely vital. And yet, he doesn't smile. Not once. You ask why he does it, why he stays. He thinks for a long moment. Because if I'm not here, someone else is. And they might be worse. For all of us. At sunset, you follow him to the villa gates where the guards are switching shifts. He signs a slate, nods to the new watchman, and pauses to stare at the horizon. Storm's coming, he says, though the sky is clear. You glance up. How can you tell? He just squints. Because the ducks are quiet. You both stand there for a long while. And somehow, that silence screams more than any shout. By dawn, the kitchen is already blistering with heat. Fires roar in sunken hearths, and smoke coils through open vents in the ceiling like it's trying to escape before things get out of hand. You arrive just in time to be hit with your new reality, kitchen duty. Congratulations. The culina of a Roman villa isn't just a place to toast bread and chat about the weather. It's a battlefield, one with boiling pots, sharp knives, and a very angry head cook named Livia, who commands her domain with a ladle like it's a scepter. She doesn't say hello. She says, "Hands clean?" "No. Washington. With ash. And scrub like you mean it." You obey instantly. This kitchen is no rustic stone chamber. It's cleverly designed chaos. There's a central hearth where meat sizzles and spits. A cold prep table near the wall. Shelves lined with amphorae, olive oil, wine, vinegar, and something labeled "Murky fish paste, do not shake." There are no windows, just slits in the stone walls that let in a hint of breeze, and wasps. So many wasps. You're set to work chopping herbs, coriander, mint, lovage, rue. They smell lovely and look vaguely poisonous. Livia mutters, "Cut too slow, you go to the ducks. Cut too fast, you'll lose a finger." You slice at medium speed. The kitchen runs to a schedule tighter than a gladiator's belt. Breakfast is light, cold bread, cheese, perhaps olives. But lunch and dinner? That's when the feasting starts. Even when the Dominus isn't here, the household expects 2 hot meals. Bread baked fresh daily, vegetables boiled and mashed into pulse, a kind of porridge, and meat or fish, if it's a lucky day. And on unlucky days? Snails. So many snails. Livia shows you how to mash garum, fermented fish sauce, into just about everything. Adds depth. She insists, though it smells like socks left in a Roman sauna. You stir it into barley stew, smear it on roast boar, even brush it onto honey cakes. You begin to suspect garum may actually be responsible for the fall of the Republic. Today, you're also roasting fowl, specifically pigeon, plucked and skewered. The skin crisps under flames while Livia bastes it with wine and herbs. The aroma is rich and savory, and for a moment you forget where you are. Then she hands you a bowl of raw duck eggs and says, "Whisk these until they confess their sins." You whisk. As midday approaches, the heat becomes unbearable. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your hair smells like ash and garlic. A slave boy slips on olive oil and crashes into the spice shelf, sending cumin and cinnamon across the floor in a swirling, fragrant tragedy. Livia doesn't yell. She just says, "Sweep it. Save what you can. No one will know." Fringe detail? Romans sometimes added lead acetate, a sweet-tasting, toxic syrup, to their wine and sweets. It's possible the Dominus's favorite honey custard is slowly poisoning him, which might explain why he once recited epic poetry to a barrel of apples. You glance around at the crew. Everyone has a task, and no one dares slow down. There's Gaius, the baker, arms dusted with flour like a ghost of wheat. He slaps dough like it owes him money. There's Mira, who handles the pickling jars, ginger, dates, onions, even flower petals. She once caught a mouse trying to sneak a bite of preserved figs and now carries a spoon like a weapon. Amidst the chaos, Livia pulls you aside. She's got a fresh burn on her forearm. She waves it off. "Occupational hazard," she mutters, dunking it in a pot of cooled lentils. "At least I'm not in the baths." Saw a man boil his foot once. You ask how long she's been here. Since I was 12, she says. Started as a floor scrubber. Worked my way up. You know the secret to surviving a Roman kitchen? You shake your head. Know your sauces. And never let the Dominus see you cry. Later that day, the Dominus's steward arrives, demanding something. Sweet but not too sweet, and no melon. He's off melon this week. You're ordered to prepare dulcia domestica, dates stuffed with nuts, dipped in honey, and rolled in sea salt. You spend 10 minutes getting it wrong before Livia sighs, grabs the bowl, and does it in one. She hands them off, muttering, "May they be the only thing he approves of today." Historians still argue whether Roman villa kitchens were staffed with skilled culinary artists, or just hard-working improvisers with decent knives and no taste buds. Ancient recipes read more like vague poetry than precise instructions. Add enough honey to make it pleasing. Could mean 1 spoon or the entire amphora. You learn quickly that pleasing depends on who's tasting, and whether they woke up cranky. At dinner, you help plate the dishes, trays of eggs, olives, pickled fish, and that boar's shoulder you've been basting all day. The platter is heavy and slick, and as you carry it to the outer atrium, you pray to any god who might be listening. No slips. No drops. You succeed, barely. Back in the kitchen, Livia pats your shoulder. You didn't ruin it. That's a good start. You're starving, of course, but kitchen staff don't eat until the masters have finished. Only then are leftovers doled out, sometimes ample, sometimes reduced to crusts and fish bones. You sit on a crate with the others, dipping bread in the pan drippings and drinking slightly sour wine from a shared cup. Exhausted, scorched, and covered in flour, you laugh when someone does a dramatic impression of the Dominus sniffing his duck custard. It's the hardest you've laughed all week. And that's the strange magic of the kitchen. Yes, it's chaos. Yes, it's dangerous. But there's a rhythm here, a brutal ballet. And if you can survive Livia's ladle, you can survive anything. Except maybe the olive oil fire that breaks out just as you're about to go to sleep. No one panics. This is Tuesday, after all. You're pulled from a not very deep sleep by the sharp clang of a wooden spoon against a bronze pot. It's grape harvest day, and you've been reassigned, again. This time, you're heading to the vineyard. Translation: blisters, bees, and fermented feet. The Vendimia, or grape harvest, is the villa's crown jewel event. It happens once a year, usually between late August and early October, and everything else bends around it. Crops can wait. Ducks can wait. Even the Dominus delays his Senate letters. Because without grapes, there's no wine, and without wine, there's no Roman villa. There's just a bunch of cranky aristocrats forced to drink water, which honestly might start a riot. You trudge to the fields before sunrise, where mist curls low around the vines like the ghosts of last year's hangovers. The rows are perfectly planted, just like everything else in Roman agriculture, geometry obsessed with efficiency. It's beautiful, in a brutally practical way. The vineyard foreman is a terrifying woman named Vibia who carries a curved pruning knife and a scowl that could split amphorae. She greets you by pointing to a basket and saying, "Full by midday, or you're squashing grapes with your nose." You get to work. The process seems simple: pick, trim, basket, repeat. But your fingers quickly ache, your back protests, and your arms are swarmed by the little insects that think grapes are their inheritance. You spot 2 workers whispering near the edge of the field and quickly learn the first unspoken vineyard rule: no talking. Vibia has ears like a hunting dog. Historians still argue how much of the Roman wine industry was automated by slaves versus managed with skilled labor. Villas like this often had a combination. The majority of pickers were low-status laborers, but pressing and fermenting often fell to specialists. Of course, no one asked you where you wanted to land. You're in the pick and ake category. By mid-morning, your basket is only half full. A boy next to you, maybe 12, is already on his second. He gives you a pitying look and mutters, "You'll get faster." Or not. Then he scampers off to empty his bounty. Once collected, the grapes are carried to the torcularium, the pressing house. You follow the flow, curious, and slightly afraid of what happens next. The pressing is less. Gently coax the juice. And more. Stomp like your life depends on it. A massive stone basin takes center stage, with sloped edges leading into channels that feed the juice into clay vats. 2 large wooden beams hang overhead, part of a screw press mechanism that comes into play after the stomping. But before any engineering kicks in, it's feet time. You're ordered to scrub your legs, and then you join 6 others in the basin. It's squishy. Cold at first, then sticky. The grapes burst under your toes with soft little pops, like bubble wrap soaked in jam. Someone slips. Someone else laughs. Someone somewhere whispers, "Don't swallow if anything splashes." You stomp in rhythm, thighs burning, skin itching. This is the mustum, the precious juice that becomes wine. Romans took this very seriously. Good wine elevated a villa's status. Bad wine? That's how people end up with duck duty permanently. As the juice flows into jars, another crew starts the secondary pressing using a massive wooden lever. It creaks and groans as it pushes out every last drop. The pomace, what's left of the skins and seeds, is collected for making the cheapest wine, or fed to animals if it's too bitter. You're allowed a quick sip of fresh must. It's sweet, tangy, and makes your lips sticky for hours. Mira, the pickler from the kitchen, appears just long enough to dump in a pouch of herbs for fermenting. "Trust me," she says. "This'll taste like victory come spring." You're not so sure. Right now it tastes like feet. The rest of the day blurs into carrying, lifting, and cleaning. You haul baskets. You mop juice spills. You get pinched by a wasp and are told, "That's a blessing. Means the vintage will be strong." Fringe tidbit: some Roman estates use goat skins, actual goat hides, to ferment or store wine. Think wineskins, but large enough to sleep in. You pray this villa uses clay jars. Goat wine sounds like a nightmare with a cork. Lunch is served under the olive trees, bread soaked in oil and bits of salted pork. You eat while sitting on a crate, legs streaked in purple, smelling like a fermented pastry. Across the field, someone is playing a reed pipe, and for a moment it feels festive. Then a shout goes up, one of the wine jars cracked. The juice is leaking. Vibia's eyes narrow. You volunteer to help fix it. Mostly to escape more grape stomping, but also because you like your nose unbroken. Using warm wax and strips of linen, you help seal the crack. It's messy but holds. Vibia doesn't say thank you, but she doesn't assign you extra night duty either. Which is the thank you. By late afternoon, the sun is low and golden, and the vineyard looks like it's melting into the earth. The final grapes are pressed. The tools are cleaned. And the first amphorae are sealed and stacked in the cellar, where they'll rest like buried treasure. Historians agree Roman villas produced wine at industrial levels. Amphorae were stamped with villa names, vintages, and sometimes cheeky slogans like "Bide Feliciter." "Drink happily!" Yours are marked with a simple sigil, a stylized owl and the letter M. The Dominus's family crest, supposedly. You finish the day sore, stained, and slightly drunk from all the must splashes. A worker named Felix offers you a tip. Rub crushed rosemary on your feet to soothe the sting. You try it. It burns. He laughs. "I meant after you wash them." As you stumble back toward your sleeping quarters, the stars begin to pierce the indigo sky. Somewhere, someone is still singing. The vineyard glows faintly in the moonlight, rows of vines like ribs of some ancient, living creature. You whisper to yourself, "I made wine today." Then you immediately trip over a goat. Welcome to harvest season. By now, you've figured out that Roman villas aren't just about crops and crushed grapes. They're teeming with creatures, some adorable, some terrifying, and all under the care of the villa's animal tenders. Guess who's the new assistant stable hand? That's right. It's you. Hope you like hooves. Your day begins with a bucket, and a brush, and the overwhelming scent of wet hay mixed with old manure, and something that might have once been milk. The air is warm, sour, and buzzing with flies the size of lentils. You take a deep breath. Immediately regret it. The villa's animal population includes sheep, goats, pigs, oxen, chickens, ducks, yes, them again, and a pair of mules with attitude problems. Horses are kept, but only a few, and mainly for the dominus's leisure. The real workhorses are actual oxen. Giant, slow, and built like they've never lost an argument. You meet Galerius, the head pecuarius, livestock manager. He's missing a finger, walks with a limp, and can identify each of the 70 sheep by their bleats alone. That one's Licinia, he says, pointing at a particularly round ewe. She kicks when it's going to rain. Your first job? Cleaning the pig pens. These aren't cute cartoon pigs. These are enormous, mud-encrusted beasts that grunt like gladiators and smell like rotting radishes. You slosh out old straw, lay new bedding, and get chased twice. Galerius applauds. Only twice? Not bad for a rookie. Next, it's on to the goats. They're clever. Too clever. You turn your back for 5 seconds and one's already nibbling your sandal strap. Another's got its head stuck in a fence because it thought the grass looked better on the other side. You try to help. You get butted in the thigh. Welcome to animal wrangling. Fun fringe fact: Romans used goat hair in textiles and cheese, but also sometimes trained goats to walk in front of elite funeral processions. Because nothing says honored death like a very confused, slightly grumpy goat in a garland. Feeding time is its own ordeal. Galerius shows you the feed mixture: chopped legumes, soaked grain, occasional scraps from the kitchen. You carry baskets, pour them into troughs, and learn quickly not to stand between a pig and its lunch. One nips your tunic. You decide it's probably fine. You didn't like that tunic anyway. Then come the sheep. You expect them to be calm, maybe even fluffy companions. You are wrong. One headbutts you within the first 5 minutes. Another bolts when you try to shear it. Shearing is a full-body sport, involving balance, patience, and an odd singing voice that Galerius swears calms them down. You hum. It kicks you. Historians still debate how Roman villas balanced animal labor with animal products. Some texts suggest oxen were sacred assets, rarely butchered. Others imply, when in doubt, turn it into stew. What's clear is that every animal had value: wool, milk, meat, manure, and none of it was wasted. After lunch, you're introduced to the cows. You're told kindly not to make eye contact. They know fear, Galerius explains, and they respect it. You help muck out their shelter, scatter fresh straw, and refill water troughs. It's hot, sticky work, and the cows moo low and slow like judgmental uncles. One of them farts so loudly it startles a chicken into laying an egg on the spot. You wonder aloud if there are any nice animals on the estate. Galerius smirks. There's the geese. You regret asking. Turns out the geese are technically livestock but mostly serve as security. They honk, peck, and strut around like feathered Praetorian guards. One locks eyes with you. You take a step back. It takes a step forward. You blink. It blinks. You leave. Quickly. The villa also keeps dogs. Big ones for guarding, smaller ones for pest control, and one lazy hound named Pulcher who sleeps on a roof tile pile and occasionally raises his head to sigh. You like him immediately. And finally, because nothing in this villa is ever simple, you're shown the dovecot. Hundreds of pigeons, fluttering, cooing, flapping. Their droppings are collected as fertilizer, their eggs eaten, and occasionally the birds themselves are served stuffed with dates. They stare at you with tiny black eyes that say, "We see all. We forgive nothing." Galerius has a weird affection for the animals, despite the chaos. He tells you about a sheep that once saved a worker from a collapsing wall. About the mule who stopped walking until it heard music again. About the duck who was somehow elected most obedient 3 years running. You can't tell if he's making this up. You're not sure it matters. You assist in a bit of amateur veterinary work, patching a pig's hoof with resin, dabbing olive oil on a sheep's irritated skin, and trying to remove a burr from a goat's ear without losing your own. It's messy, smelly, and involves more screaming than you'd prefer. And just when you think the day is done, Galerius pulls out a strange bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, a calf being hand-fed from a horn-shaped bottle. Its mother died last week, and now it's Galerius's nightly vigil. He hands it to you. Your turn. You sit in the quiet barn, stars visible through the gaps in the wooden ceiling. The calf nuzzles the bottle, warm and greedy. You stroke its coarse hair and wonder how you ended up here, far from Rome, far from comfort, holding an orphan baby cow under a thatched roof. You think of Galerius's words earlier. They know fear, but also hope. This calf doesn't know your name, your status, or how many amphorae of wine you hauled last week. It just wants milk and warmth. You whisper, "Me too." And in that moment, under the smell of hay and animals, in the flickering light of a smoky lamp, the villa doesn't feel so cruel. Just alive. Then a goose honks nearby and you nearly drop the calf. The geese weren't the worst of it. Oh no. Not even close. Because today, you've been promoted, or demoted, depending on your outlook, to Duck-Wrangler. Yes, the villa has actual staff for its waterfowl. Ducks. Quacking, waddling, biting little bundles of chaos. And you, my friend, are now in charge of their daily affairs. Your supervisor for this delightful new role is a man named Spurius, who hasn't smiled since the Republic fell. He's got one lazy eye, a limp, and a voice like a whetstone grinding sarcasm. Welcome to the pond, he mutters, handing you a long stick with a frayed red ribbon on the end. Wave it gently. They like flair. You look at the stick. You look at the ducks. The ducks look at you. Not lovingly. The villa's pond is a murky oval lined with reeds, algae, and what appears to be one very judgmental turtle. The ducks, somewhere between 30 and 40 depending on who's counting and whether any have wandered off, splash, squabble, and chase each other like they've had too much wine. Spurius explains the basics. They eat snails, bugs, pondweed, and barley mash. We collect eggs at dawn and again at dusk. Some eggs go to the kitchen. The rest go to the Dominus's personal basket. He says duck eggs are divine. Treat them like gold, but more fragile. You nod solemnly. You drop your first egg within 10 minutes. Spurius doesn't yell. He just sighs so deeply it rearranges your soul. The job, in theory, is simple. Feed them, gather eggs, ensure they don't wander into forbidden zones, like the herb garden, again, and keep predators away. You quickly learn that everything is a predator if you're small, fluffy, and delicious. Dogs, snakes, even hawks. And occasionally, yes, this is true, drunken guests. Spurius tells you a story. Saturnalia feast 2 years ago. One of the Dominus's friends tried to wear a duck on his head like a crown. Took 3 of us to wrestle it back. The duck survived. His hairline didn't. Historians still argue whether ducks were kept mainly for food or had symbolic significance. Some villa manuals list them alongside chickens and geese as food stock, while others suggest they were valued for eggs, feathers, and pest control. But here? These ducks are practically divine mascots. There's even a small mosaic near the pond that reads, Anats Felix. Happy ducks. You're tasked with cleaning the pond today. It's less pond and more slowly fermenting soup. Using a broad wooden rake, you skim algae, scoop muck, and get very intimate with smells no one should ever smell. Mid-scrape, a duck swims straight at you, quacking aggressively. Spurius laughs. That's Prima. She doesn't like change. Prima bites your shin. The day rolls on. Ducks get fed. Eggs get collected. You learn how to count them without cracking them, how to distract the particularly territorial males, and how to walk through the reeds without getting mud up your nose. Fringe detail. Romans sometimes used duck fat mixed with herbs as a healing salve. Possibly effective. Probably slippery. You find a jar labeled Pingato Anatis in the storage hut. It smells like rosemary and regret. The Dominus sends word via servant. He wants double the eggs delivered by Saturnalia. That means more feed, more patrols, more stress, and possibly duck-themed prayers. Spurius rolls his eyes. If he wants more eggs, he can come sit on the nest himself. You begin to develop a system. Quiet steps in the morning. Low humming as you approach the brooding hens. Collect the warm eggs, place them in a straw-padded basket, and immediately stop anything that looks like it's about to poop on your sleeve. You also discover the ducks have personalities. There's Prima, the alpha queen. Then there's Octavia, who lays eggs like it's a competitive sport. A drake named Rufus who thinks he's in charge, and a small, limping duck with a crooked wing who only eats if you toss food right at her feet. You name her Crumb. Every evening, you guide them back to the shelter. It's a low-roof coop made of clay bricks and straw, surprisingly warm and feather-packed. They settle in with minimal fuss, unless it rains. Ducks love rain. Rain means playtime. And playtime means an extra hour of chasing and coaxing and slipping in pond slime. One night it storms. Thunder cracks overhead. Rain lashes the pond. The ducks lose their minds. You're soaked, cold, and waving that ridiculous red ribbon stick like a wizard casting poultry magic. The ducks scatter. One tries to climb a tool rack. Another disappears under a bush. You scream. They quack. It's chaos set to percussion. By the time you've rounded them all up, except for Rufus, who's found his way into the latrine and now looks both smug and traumatized, you're shivering and covered in something you sincerely hope is just mud. Spurious meets you at the shelter, holding a cup of sour wine. He hands it to you. Duck-Wrangling, he says, builds character. You drink. It burns. There's something absurdly satisfying about seeing the ducks settle in for the night. They tuck heads under wings. They make soft honking snores. Crumb curls up next to your foot and doesn't even peck when you shift. Historians might overlook the Duck-Wrangler's place in the grand Roman machine, but this job? This feathered nightmare? It matters. Ducks keep the pond clean. They provide food. They serve as early warning alarms when foxes or strangers sneak too close. And in a strange way, they keep the villa from taking itself too seriously. You finish the night brushing feathers off your tunic, nursing a bite on your hand, and wondering if ducks ever appreciate anything. Probably not. But tomorrow, you'll show up anyway. Because ducks wait for no one. You wake to the unmistakable scent of urine. No, really. Acrid, nose-wrinkling, eye-watering. The kind of smell that makes you question every decision you've ever made. And it's not a prank, this is your new job, Phalonica duty. Yes, welcome to the villa's laundry, where togas go to be reborn and your dignity quietly dies. The Romans, brilliant as they were at roads and aqueducts, had one very peculiar approach to cleanliness. They used aged urine as detergent. Why? Because it contains ammonia. Why aged? Let's not ask. Your overseer is a Phalonica veteran named Marcia. Wiry, perpetually damp, and fully immune to shame. She's already up to her elbows in frothy yellowish suds and greets you with, "Hope you wore your worst sandals." You did not. The laundry area is built like a bathhouse in reverse. Stone basins instead of pools, steam rising from the hot rinse corner, and baskets overflowing with sweaty tunics, wine-stained linens, and the occasional sock you're pretty sure is plotting revenge. There's a constant soundscape of splashing, scrubbing, and muttered curses. You're handed a tunic and a paddle. Beat it until it begs for mercy, Marcia says, but not so hard it shreds. We had that issue last week. The Dominus doesn't like lace togas. You get to work. The method is part dance, part punishment ritual. Soak the cloth in urine, stomp on it barefoot in a stone basin, rinse it with lye and water, then lay it out in the sun to dry. You're ankle deep in a pungent mixture while Marcia sings what you think is a love ballad to a lost sock. Historians still argue how many villas had their own Philonici versus sending laundry to town shops. But for self-sufficient estates like this one, keeping the laundry in-house saved time, coins, and plausible deniability. If someone shrinks the Dominus's toga, it's easier to hide the evidence when no middlemen are involved. After your third tunic, your feet are prune-skinned and your nose has given up. The worst part? You get used to it. The smell becomes background music. It's oddly meditative. You begin to understand why Marcia looks so serene, like she's reached some transcendent laundry-based enlightenment. But there's danger here, too. Soap is slippery. Tubs are deep. And Marcia warns you. Watch out for the snakes. You laugh. She doesn't. Apparently, warmth and damp cloth attract the occasional water snake or rat. One time, a snake slithered into the rinse basin and coiled itself into a tunic sleeve. The wearer didn't notice until lunch. It did not go well. You wring out the garments and help hang them on stretched ropes in the courtyard. The sun is your final tool, bleaching whites and drying damp fabric until it's crispy enough to stand on its own. The wind carries the not-so-subtle aroma of ammonia. Visitors wrinkle their noses. Marcia shrugs. Cleanliness isn't always fragrant. Then there's the ironing, or rather, the smoothing. You use heated stones wrapped in cloth to press out wrinkles. The linen crackles beneath the weight, steaming faintly. It's kind of satisfying, like you're convincing the fabric to behave. Fringe tidbit: Roman laundry slaves sometimes used sulfur smoke to whiten garments. Essentially, they fumigated them. This villa skips that method after one too many incidents involving singed drapes and unconscious mice. You break for lunch: cold lentils and bread with bits of fig, eaten sitting on a flipped-over wash basin. Marcia shares her cup of watered wine and tells you about the time she accidentally washed the Dominus's favorite toga with his son's tunic, which had a love poem scrawled on the hem in ink. Took 3 days to clean, and I still got reassigned to chamber pot duty. Love stinks. As the sun starts to fall, you help fold the dried laundry and stack it for delivery. You're given the high honor of escorting a particularly fluffy pile of linens to the pars urbana, the family's private quarters. You walk slowly, reverently, trying not to think about how this cloth was recently soaking in pee. A young servant opens the door, peeks in the stack, and mutters, "Finally!" Then slams it shut again. No thanks. No smile. Just another delivery. Back in the Filonica, Marcia has started singing again, this time a work chant that repeats the phrase, "Rub and stomp, rinse and pray." You join in, mostly because it's either that or crying. Later, a man named Rufinus arrives with a basket of very suspicious tunics and a sheepish look. "Bloodstains," he whispers. "Not mine." Marcia sighs, hands you a paddle, and says, "Hope you don't believe in omens." The blood comes out, mostly. The toga's got a permanent pinkish tint, which Marcia fixes by rubbing it with a mixture of chalk and vinegar. It looks passable in firelight. Which, let's be honest, is how most Roman fashion gets away with poor laundering. By the end of the day, your hands are raw. Your sandals are ruined. And your sense of smell has shifted into a higher dimension. But oddly, you feel accomplished. Like you've scrubbed away more than dirt. Maybe even a little of the weight on your shoulders. Marcia claps you on the back. "Not bad. If you're still breathing after a week, I'll teach you how to starch linen with bean water. It's got bounce." You nod. You have no idea what that means. You soak your feet in a clean bucket, lean back against the stone wall, and watch the steam rise from the rinse tubs. There's a strange peace here. A quiet rhythm to the scrub and stomp. It's not glamorous. It's not fragrant. But it's honest. Then you spot a duck waddling in, eyeing the rinse water. You leap up. Not again. You wake up indoors for once. Indoors meaning a cramped storage room with 12 other people and a persistent smell of pickled onions. Today, you're reassigned to interior duty. That's right. No more ducks, no more urine tubs, at least for now. Today, you'll be working in the villa's beating heart, the pars urbana. The house itself. And that means one thing: status games. This is the world of household slaves, the domestics, the polished, the allegedly graceful, and you're joining their ranks for the day. Your first lesson? The job is 30% cleaning, 70% dodging blame. You're met by Antonia, head of the Familia Urbana, who greets you with a look that could fossilize a figure. Her tunic is pressed, her hair pinned with surgical precision, and her eyebrows are permanently arched in silent judgment. "You'll help with silver polishing," she says, handing you a cloth and a bowl of what smells suspiciously like spit and ashes. "Do not breathe near the dining goblets." You nod. Antonia leads you through the inner villa, Bright marble floors, painted walls, wide windows with fluttering curtains that somehow always smell like rosemary. The Dominus's family doesn't live here full-time, but you wouldn't know it from the upkeep. Furniture gleams. Statues are dust-free. Even the fruit bowls are arranged like offerings to an interior design god. Silver polishing sounds easy until you're 20 minutes in, hunched over a platter so big it could double as a shield. You wipe. You buff. You blink at your own face staring back in distorted reflection and think, how did I get here? One wrong smear, one missed fingerprint, and you risk Antonia's wrath. She doesn't yell, she sighs. Deeply. Like you've personally disappointed the ancestors. The household staff is its own micro-empire. There's Manius, the cupbearer, who only speaks in near whispers and somehow always knows where the Dominus left his goblet. There's Kasia, the hairdresser, who's rumored to have stabbed a former client with a comb after being called too enthusiastic. And there's you, the temporary scullion, awkwardly navigating a world of low voices, sideways glances, and strict social choreography. Historians still argue whether house slaves were envied for their proximity to wealth or pitted for their constant surveillance. It's true, they slept indoors, ate better, and sometimes even received education. But they also lived under the constant eye of their masters, where one clumsy spill could undo years of favor. After silver duty, you're assigned to dusting. Easy enough, except every object is old, fragile, expensive, and possibly cursed. One bust of a former magistrate seems to glare at you as you brush its nose. Another piece, a bronze statuette of Hercules wrestling a snake, has clearly seen better days. You clean it anyway, trying not to think about whether it's been involved in any mysterious falling accidents. You then move to the Dominus's private study, tablinum, it's called. It smells like ink, dried laurel, and masculine ego. The desk is covered in scrolls, seals, and one suspiciously fresh figure. You're told not to touch anything, so naturally, everything suddenly looks very touchable. A junior servant named Dama warns you. Last person who spilled ink in here got reassigned to poultry plucking. In December. You freeze. You dust the floor instead. At midday, Antonia inspects your work. She nods at your silver platter, then narrows her eyes at the windowsill. A single speck of dust. You swear it wasn't there earlier. She leans in, wipes it with one perfectly dry fingertip, and says, "Improve." Then walks away. No praise. But no punishment either. In villa terms, you're thriving. Next comes the afternoon rush, bed making, oil lamp trimming, floor sweeping. Every cushion fluffed just so. Every flame adjusted to welcoming but not theatrical. And heavens forbid you overscent a room. The last time someone lit too much myrrh incense, the Dominus declared the whole villa smelled like a spice market having a nervous breakdown. Fringe tidbit: Roman elite homes used crushed rose petals in the floor mosaics before important guests arrived, so when you walked, your sandals would release subtle floral notes. You try this once with lavender. You sneeze 7 times and fall into a chair. Antonia banishes you to hall sweeping. Even hall sweeping is a social game. You greet passing staff with just the right nod, not too eager, not too aloof. You memorize footsteps. Heavy ones mean guards, quick ones mean the steward, shuffling ones probably mean the Dominus's uncle, who tends to wander around looking for wine and calling everyone boy. By early evening, you're assigned to assist in dressing the Dominus's wife. You don't touch her directly, only help Kasia arrange her garments on the side table, stola, palla, fibili pins, and a string of pearls with a clasp more complicated than most war strategies. She enters, examines your linen folding, and murmurs, "Acceptable." You almost cry. Kasia leans over and whispers, "She said acceptable?" That's like a standing ovation. As the sun sets, you're given a tray of fresh linens to deliver to the guest rooms. One guest, a traveling poet who insists on being called Falco the Fabulous, offers you a poem in exchange. It includes the phrase, "Your dusting moved my soul." You nod politely and flee. Back in the servant quarters, you collapse onto a bench. Your arms ache. your back's gone stiff from constant bowing. But your tunic is clean, your tasks are done, and Antonia didn't glare at you during dinner service. That counts as a win. Household work, you realize, isn't about strength. It's about precision, presence, and pretending you don't hear anything you're not supposed to. Conversations, secrets, flirtations, they float around you like smoke. You catch half a sentence here, a whisper there. But you say nothing. Because the number one rule inside the villa? You see everything, but you speak nothing. Until someone asks if anyone saw who left a wine stain on the senator's seat cushion. And then? You point at the duck. Always blame the duck. This morning, you trade dust rags and ducks for fire and iron. You're apprenticing today in the villa's workshop, the humming, clanging corner of the estate where things are built, broken, and occasionally explode. Welcome to the world of craftsmen, blacksmiths, tinkerers, potters, and that one guy who insists he invented a cheese grater that doubles as a musical instrument. The workshop smells like scorched wood, hot metal, and clay dust. A giant bellows wheezes in the corner like a dragon with asthma. The forge glows, a red-hot mouth that occasionally spits sparks in your direction. Your master today is a man named Hilaris, an older smith with one eyebrow, no patience, and a laugh that sounds like it might hurt your feelings. Keep your tunic tight and your fingers tighter, he barks. And if you drop the tongs, don't pick them up unless you enjoy the smell of burning regret. You're handed a hammer roughly the size of your head and a pair of iron tongs. Your job, assist, observe, and hopefully avoid a third-degree burn. The villa's craftsmen are a peculiar blend of brute force and subtle genius. They build everything from plows to hinges, horseshoes to kitchen knives. Today, Hilaris is forging new hinges for the grain storage doors and reshaping a badly dented cooking pot someone mistook for a helmet during a drunken goat chase. True story. You watch him heat the iron until it's a bright, angry orange, then hammer it with terrifying rhythm. The clang echoes through the stone workshop like a war chant. Sweat pours from his brow. He shouts over the noise. This isn't just labor, boy. This is art. Ugly, angry art. You help hold the metal in place while he bends it around a form. Your hands tremble slightly. He doesn't seem to notice, or maybe he does and doesn't care. There's no room for nerves in a place where the floor is literally smoking. Historians still debate how specialized villa craftsmen truly were. Some believe the average villa had only a few generalists who made do with whatever tools they had. Others point to evidence of on-site specialists, smiths, carpenters, potters, who turned out goods not just for the estate, but for trade. Either way, when something broke, someone had to fix it, and that someone usually smelled like soot. Mid-morning, Hilaris leaves you to assist Karina, the villa's potter. Her workshop is smaller, filled with clay, wheels, and rows of half-dried jugs. She's younger than you expected, quick with her hands and quicker with her sarcasm. You're from the house team, aren't you? She says, narrowing her eyes. Can you even lift a water jug without weeping? You prove that you can. Barely. She shows you how to shape a jug neck, how to center clay on the wheel, and how not to sneeze while spinning unless you want pottery with character. You mess up your first attempt. The second becomes a bull. The third ends up vaguely resembling a shoe. She nods. Good. Ugly, but it holds water. That's something. Then she shows you the kiln. It's fueled by charcoal and ancient spite, reaching temperatures high enough to bake pottery and eyebrows alike. You load pieces in carefully, each one a potential triumph, or a smoldering pile of oops. Fringe tidbit: Roman villas often had small kilns tucked behind workshops. Some even recycled broken pots by grinding them into teste, crushed pottery used in cement and wall plaster. You step on a pile and now have dust in your sandals, your tunic, and probably your ears. After lunch, you're back with Hilaris, this time helping with locks. Yes, locks. Simple but effective mechanisms using pins and tumblers. Romans didn't just bash doors, he growls. They locked them. Civilization, lad. He hands you a carved wooden key. Don't lose this. Took me 3 days to carve the teeth. You ask him if he ever invents new tools. He pauses. Sometimes. Once made a two-headed hammer. Didn't work. Looked impressive, though. He gestures to a rusty object on a shelf that looks like it could open a portal. Or make soup. Historians still argue whether villa workshops were places of true invention or just practical maintenance hubs. But there's some evidence, fragments of odd tools, hybrid devices, strange inscriptions, that hints at a little mad genius behind the anvil. Hilaris certainly fits the bill. Toward the evening, you're tasked with sharpening blades. You take a seat at the whetstone, turning the wheel slowly, the blade pressed carefully at the right angle. It's hypnotic. Soothing. Until Karina casually mentions, "That one belonged to the Dominus. If you nick it, he'll notice." You don't nick it. You do sweat on it. Same thing, really? The sun drops lower. The forge dims. The potter's wheel slows. The workshop softens into its twilight hum, metal cooling, clay hardening, sawdust settling. You sit outside with Hilaris and Karina, sipping watered wine and chewing on olives too salty to be legal. They talk shop. You listen. Hilaris points to a tree split by lightning. "I'll take that wood for plow handles," he says, as if the sky tried to help. You ask if it ever gets boring. Hilaris shrugs. "Every day's different. Every fix is a puzzle. Every burn is a lesson." Karina raises her wine cup. "To ugly art that works." You clink your cup against theirs and smile, soot still on your cheeks. And as the stars begin to blink awake, you realize you've forged more than hinges today. You've forged belonging. Even if tomorrow, you're probably back to ducks. You start your day in the Scola, and almost immediately regret it. The schoolroom smells like beeswax, ink, and despair. Low benches sit in stiff rows under a fresco of Minerva, who stares down at you with silent judgment, holding a scroll and a spear. You're not the student today, you're the assistant tutor. Which sounds better than Duck-Wrangler until you meet your pupils. "Sal," says the head tutor, Lucanus, a thin man with a voice like dry parchment and eyes that twitch when someone misdeclines a noun. He's in charge of educating the Dominus's children and a few of the estate's favored youth. "You will pass out tablets. You will ensure silence. You will, under no circumstances, attempt to teach poetry." You nod. You hand out wax tablets. One student takes hers with a huff and says, "This one's scratched. I can't write an AV if someone's gouged an L." You want to gouge something else. This villa's classroom is modest but serious, more grammar drill camp than cozy reading nook. The children wear simple tunics and wide-eyed boredom. There's Marius, age 9, who insists on drawing gladiators mid-disembowelment. Julia, age 11, who corrects your pronunciation. And Titus, age 7, who's managed to stab his stylus into his own sandal within the first 10 minutes. Your job? Keep them focused while Lucanus lectures on Latin conjugations and Greek verb forms. "Amo amas amat," he drones, while the children quietly plot your downfall. One child sneezes into his wax tablet. Another carves a tiny, rude donkey into the corner. Julia points at it. "He made it look like you." Lucanus doesn't notice. He's explaining how to structure a proper epigramma, a short poem, often rude. Which is both ironic and foreshadowing, because by lunch break, Marius has composed one about your sandals smelling like fermented cabbage. You'd be insulted if the meter weren't actually pretty good. Historians still argue whether villa children were taught seriously or just ceremonially educated until marriage or military age. What's clear is that many Roman elites wanted their children trained in Latin, Greek, rhetoric, and sometimes philosophy. Literacy was a status symbol, and knowing how to quote Homer made you sound clever, even if you were still picking your nose. Lucanus takes his job seriously. He once stopped a lesson mid-sentence to debate a visiting tutor on whether Cicero overused gerunds. He keeps a rod by his desk, not often used, but pointedly there. He calls it the persuader. It makes the students behave just enough. Most of the time. Today's lesson is about Roman virtues, pietas, duty, gravitas, seriousness, virtus, manly excellence, though that one gets awkward when Julia raises an eyebrow. Lucanus has you read aloud a passage from a scroll on the importance of knowing one's place. You do, and halfway through, Marius falls asleep on his tablet. Lucanus sighs. Recite the passage to him in his dreams. Maybe that will help. You poke Marius awake. He grumbles something about ducks. In the afternoon, the lesson shifts to writing. The children etch their letters into wax with bronze styluses, scraping and scratching like tiny archaeologists. You lean over Julia's shoulder and gently correct a backwards R. She fixes it, then says, I know. I just wanted to see if you did. Lucanus hands you a scroll and says, Time for recitation. You read, slowly, awkwardly, a short tale about a fox and a wine jar. Moral: do not desire what you cannot reach. The kids mostly focus on the fox. Titus raises his hand. Would the fox have reached it if he were taller? You try not to say. Welcome to life, kid. During their break, the children tumble outside into the courtyard, chasing each other with reed sticks and yelling, Caesar! Like it's a battle cry. You sit with Lucanus under a vine-covered pergola, sipping diluted wine. You enjoy this? You ask him. Not the sneezing. But yes. He watches Julia organize a mock Senate session with the others. There's something in teaching. A kind of immortality. They remember your voice long after they forget your face. You look over at the classroom. The wax tablets are a mess. One scroll is now wearing a laurel crown. Someone's stylus has been stabbed into a pomegranate. Fringe fact: Roman children used a pedagogus, a personal tutor/chaperone who walked them to lessons, ensured proper behavior, and sometimes acted as a life coach. Lucanus does not do that. He just sips more wine and mutters, Let them wear themselves out. Less talking later. Back inside, the final lesson of the day, oral presentation. Each student recites a memorized line. Julia delivers hers with perfect diction and a flourish. Marius misquotes Virgil and blames a bee. Titus panics and starts reciting the household duck count. You pretend it's an allegory. By sundown, the lesson ends. Lucanus rolls up his scrolls and dusts his tunic. You help tidy the benches, gather styluses, and try to dislodge wax from your elbow. As the children scamper off to their next activity, bathing, eating, pestering their parents, you sit on the edge of a step, exhausted. Your brain is full of conjugations, your throat dry from reading, and your patience just barely intact. Lucanus stands beside you. You did better than most. You blink. Really? No one cried. That's success. He heads off to dinner. You stay a moment longer, staring at the scribbled donkey on a wax tablet someone forgot. It does look like you, but with better hair. It starts with a chicken. Not a rogue chicken, not a particularly noisy one, just a very dead one. Lying on a woven mat, legs up, eyes rolled back like it's seen the end of the Republic and wasn't impressed. Today, you're assisting the villa's religious functionaries. Priests. Augurs. The Superstition Patrol. The augur greets you with a warm smile and the phrase, We're reading entrails today. Bring a sponge. You stare at the chicken. The chicken does not respond. His name is Calvus. Well, the augur's name, not the chicken, and he's responsible for the villa's spiritual wellness. This includes offering sacrifices, interpreting omens, blessing new tools, and explaining why the wine cellar smells weird this week. Spoiler: ghosts. It's always ghosts. He walks you through today's job. This morning, we're determining whether it's an auspicious time to begin the olive harvest. This chicken, he gestures reverently, will tell us. You'll take notes. You fetch a wax tablet and try not to think about breakfast. Calvus performs a haruspicium, a ritual imported from the Etruscans and still very much in fashion with landowners who believe chickens have access to divine Wi-Fi. He makes an offering to the gods, hums a chant that sounds suspiciously like snoring, and slices the bird open with theatrical precision. You do not pass out. That's progress. Liver looks promising. Calvus mutters. Nice color. Good texture. This crease here? He taps it. Excellent omen for oil production. Bad news if we were planning a journey. Luckily, we're not. You scribble something that looks vaguely like oil good, travel bad. Historians still argue whether Roman augury was taken seriously by the public, or just treated as high-concept theater. Some emperors wouldn't sneeze without consulting an augur, others laughed it off, until something exploded, and suddenly everyone wanted to check a goat's spleen. You follow Calvus to the villa's small shrine, tucked into a corner of the courtyard. It's called a lararium, a sacred space dedicated to the household gods, Laras and Penates. There's a little altar, painted figurines, and offerings of bread, wine, and the occasional raisin cake that looks suspiciously nibbled. You help clean the area, sweeping ash, refilling oil lamps, and replacing the stale bread with fresh. Calvus lights incense and murmurs prayers. You repeat a few carefully. The Laras protect the family and property, and he insists they respond better to sincerity than volume. Then you join him for a round of auspicia, interpreting signs from birds. You sit in the garden, watching the sky while Calvus explains the rules. If the bird flies from left to right, good omen. Right to left? Bad. If it hovers, unclear. If it poops on your head, neutral but embarrassing. You spend an hour watching a particularly lazy dove circle the fig tree. Calvus hums. That's 3 circles and a half-moon arc, good for planting beans. Terrible for lawsuits. You ask, how often are these accurate? He winks. Accurate enough. Later, he prepares a protective charm for the upcoming feast day. A small bundle wrapped in red cloth, filled with rosemary, garlic skin, and what he claims is wolf whisker. You doubt that part, but not anyway. He tucks it into the roof thatch above the dining room. Keeps envy out. Keeps food from burning. Keeps the Dominus from deciding the soup needs more lemon. You help hang small wreaths at various doorways. Not for decoration, each has a symbolic plant: laurel for protection, olive for peace, myrtle for luck. You learn to tie the knots just right. Too tight, Calvus says, and you trap bad energy. Too loose, and it escapes. Just enough tension, like a family dinner. In the afternoon, a servant runs in breathless. The well frogs are croaking again. Calvus perks up. All of them? Yes. He grabs his kit. Frogs mean a shift in weather. Or a love triangle. Possibly both. You follow him to the well, where indeed a chorus of amphibians is staging a loud protest. Calvus crouches, listens, nods, and announces. Expect a storm. And jealousy in the kitchen. You write that down. Fringe fact: some Roman households employed charm makers or magici servi, who crafted curses and love spells alongside protective amulets. It's unclear if Calvus dabbles in that. You suspect he does. There's a locked drawer in his quarters labeled definitely not curses. By evening, you've participated in 2 blessing rituals, scattered salt at the threshold, and helped Calvus write a small scroll of thanks to the household deities. You hang it near the lararium, weighted with a bit of cooked barley. As the sun dips low, Calvus sits with you by a fig tree, sipping mulled wine. You learned something today? He asks. You nod. That chickens are surprisingly informative. He chuckles. And you? You pause. That fear can be calmed. Sometimes by ritual. Sometimes by laughter. He nods solemnly. The gods like both. The moon rises, fat and golden. A breeze stirs the vines. Somewhere nearby, a duck quacks once, then settles down. You and Calvus sip in silence. It might all be nonsense. It might all be real. But for tonight, the world feels in balance. And you still have frog songs echoing in your ears. You're handed a torch before you're fully awake, and that's never a good sign. It's your turn for night watch. Every villa has guards. Not always professional soldiers, often just trusted slaves or free workers who can stay awake and swing a stick convincingly. And tonight that's you. The steward gave you a nod, a torch, and an offhand. Try not to die. Encouraging. The air is cool, the sky heavy with stars. The courtyard glows faintly under oil lamps. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots. You swallow. The torch crackles in your hand. Your shift partner is a man named Decimus. He's missing half an ear, owns a dog that growls at everything, including shadows, and tells you, "If you hear hissing, don't investigate. Trust me." You trust him immediately. First stop, the outer wall. The villa is encircled by a low stone barrier, more symbolic than defensive, but still important. It keeps animals out, keeps children in, and gives guards a line to walk when trying to look busy. You and Decimus stroll slowly, torchlight flickering across vines and hedges. It's peaceful. Until it's not. A rustle. You freeze. Torch raised. Decimus squints. Just the wind. Probably. It's a hedgehog. You try not to scream. Next stop, the granary. This one matters. A good harvest means nothing if someone, or something, steals the grain. Mice, bandits, and yes, even neighbors with long arms and short ethics. You inspect the locks. All secure. Inside, you hear faint scratching. Rats? You whisper. Possibly ghosts, Decimus replies. You decide not to ask follow-up questions. Historians still argue how secure rural villas truly were. Some claim estates were isolated and vulnerable to raids. Others argue that regular patrols, dogs, and community ties kept them relatively safe. Most agree that night duty was less about actual combat and more about being alert, present, and able to run fast if needed. Speaking of dogs, you meet the villa's true security system, the Cain's Villi or guard dogs. Big, muscular, and with names like Shadow and Cinder, they patrol the grounds with unnerving silence. One appears beside you with no warning. You nearly drop the torch. Decimus chuckles. That's Fortuna. Don't pet her. You don't even look at her. The dogs know the land better than you ever will. They move in patterns, checking key corners, sniffing doorways, vanishing into the dark. One once chased off a thief trying to steal amphory by moonlight. The thief dropped the jug. It broke. The Dominus was furious about the jug. On your route, you also check the animal pens. The sheep are quiet, huddled together. The pigs snore like elderly senators. The ducks are awake. Of course they are. You shine the torch toward the pond. The ducks are pacing, waddling nervously. You hear something splash. Do ducks usually swim at night? You ask. Decimus grunts. Only when they're plotting something. Then the hissing. Low. Long, sinister. You spin the torch around and catch a glimpse of something curling behind the grain cart. Scales. Movement. Definitely not the hedgehog. A snake? You ask. A big one, Decimus confirms. He picks up a shovel. Do I get a weapon? You ask. You've got a torch. You wonder if torch-wielding duck protector is an actual job title. You follow the trail, carefully, until it disappears into the woodpile. Decimus shrugs. It'll stay warm there. We'll check in the morning. He leans in. Don't tell the kitchen. They'll try to cook it. You move on, your nerves frayed but functional. In the villa's outer corridor, you find a door ajar. Just slightly. You push it open. Inside, a shadow moves. You shout. The shadow screams. Turns out it's Felix, the potter's assistant, sneaking a midnight snack of stolen honey cakes. You swear not to tell anyone, mostly because he shares one with you. It's a little dry, but divine after a long walk. Fringe detail. Some Roman villas employed night guards who also acted as fire watch. Torches, ovens, braziers, they all posed fire risks. You check every oil lamp, every kitchen ember, making sure nothing is smoldering where it shouldn't. The kitchen smells like baked onions and anxiety. All seems calm. Decimus pulls out a wine flask, for warmth, and offers a sip. You hesitate, then take one. It's tart, strong, and surprisingly herbal. I admit, he says proudly. Helps the nerves. You ask how long he's been a night guard. 15 years, he replies. Seen it all. Escaped pigs. Drunken guests. One time, a cow gave birth during a lunar eclipse and everyone thought the world was ending. You ask what scares him most. Silence, he says. Too quiet means something's thinking. Or sneaking. You both fall silent for a while, listening to crickets, the breeze in the trees, a dog yawning nearby. By the time dawn bleeds into the sky, your torch has burned low. You've walked the entire perimeter twice, scared off a raccoon-looking thing, and learned more than you ever wanted about nighttime pond life. The ducks are asleep. Finally, you hand the torch to the next shift. Your fingers are stiff, your feet ache, and your brain buzzes with every creak and shuffle you've heard all night. As you lie down in your scratchy bedding, trying not to dream about snakes and shouting Potter boys, you whisper to yourself. At least no one was robbed. Or eaten. Then again, the kitchen staff still hasn't found that missing goose. The sun is just peeking over the vineyard when everything goes completely wrong. Today is the villa's harvest festival, a day of celebration, sacrifice, overeating, and the sort of carefully choreographed chaos that makes you wonder why anyone thought inviting 30 guests and wreathing pigs and flowers was a good idea. You've been volunteered, which, in villa terms, means no one else wanted the job and you weren't fast enough to hide. Your role, assist with preparations. This includes decorating, hauling, and possibly catching things that are on fire. The villa is transformed. Garlands of olive branches hang from columns. Tables are dragged into the courtyard. Amphorae of wine are lined up like sleepy sentries. Even the ducks have ribbons tied around their necks, which, as you predicted, they hate. The Dominus is giddy. He walks the grounds, wine in hand, yes, already, pointing at things and declaring them rustically elegant. His wife frowns at the floral arrangements. His son is trying to ride a goat. The atmosphere is spirited. You're sent to the kitchen, where Livia is in the middle of orchestrating what looks like a culinary war effort. Chickpeas are boiling, flatbreads are puffing, and a whole boar is slowly roasting on a spit, its mouth stuffed with apples and its expression disturbingly human. Don't touch anything, Livia barks. Unless it's on fire. Then tell me first. You back away carefully. Outside, Mira is directing a team setting up the entertainment platform. There will be dancing, poetry readings, possibly a poorly rehearsed pantomime about Ceres, the harvest goddess. You're given a tunic dyed green and gold and told to stand there and look festive. You try. The first guests arrive just before midday, noble neighbors, a poet or two, and that one merchant who always smells like imported cinnamon. They're greeted with wine, fig cakes, and polite bows. By noon, the courtyard is full of laughter, lyres, and people shouting, Io Saturnalia! Even though it's the wrong festival. No one cares. Historians still argue whether villa feasts were sincere religious rituals or just elaborate excuses to drink in public. Most agree they were both. A nod to the gods, followed by a full dive into indulgence. And today's version? It's textbook. The sacrifice kicks things off, symbolic, mostly. A white pig is led into the courtyard, decked in wreaths, looking very confused. The priest murmurs a blessing, sprinkles grain on its back, and makes the cuts swift and merciful. You don't watch. You do help carry the animal to the cook pit, where it becomes the centerpiece of the feast. Livia sighs. Make sure the apple doesn't roll out this time. The guests are seated on dining couches in the triclinium, which has been dragged outdoors for the occasion. Low tables are set. Wine is poured. The first course is served: eggs, olives, honey-glazed dormice, don't ask, and fresh bread. You pour wine carefully, avoiding eye contact with the senator who winks at everyone, including statues. And then, the chaos begins. First, a dog steals a roasted chicken. Then, a drunken guest mistakes the fish sauce for drinking wine. A dancer trips, takes out a table leg, and sends a bowl of lentils flying into someone's lap. A short brawl breaks out over who gets the last fig-stuffed date. You help mop up wine, carry away broken pottery, and try to rescue the dignity of the man who fell into the fountain while reciting bad poetry. Meanwhile, the ducks are loose. Again. Prima leads the charge across the courtyard, knocking over a fruit basket. Rufus flaps onto a noblewoman's couch, quacking like he's been personally wronged. You run after them, green and gold tunic flapping, and manage to herd them toward the stables. Mostly. Fringe tidbit, Roman parties often included games like Guess the Proverb, or Toss the Nut, along with occasional philosophical debates that rapidly devolved into who could belch loudest. You witness both. The belching wins. Back at the kitchen, Livia is furious. Someone added mint to the barley stew. The Dominus hates mint. You prepare to apologize. Not you, she huffs. But start peeling these apples. Quietly. You peel. Quietly. By late afternoon, the music slows. Guests lean back, sated and wine-logged. Children chase each other through the olive groves. Someone is asleep under the grape arbor. The Dominus raises a cup and delivers a speech about the bounty of the land, the favor of the gods, and how next year's harvest will be even greater. He tries to stand on a bench to emphasize the final line. The bench tips. He recovers, barely, and everyone cheers. You exhale. Cleanup begins as the sun begins to set. You collect cups, wipe tables, and try to stop a tipsy poet from reciting his 12-part elegy to a boiled turnip. He insists. You nod. You pretend to listen. Later, you help Mira carry the performance props back inside. That went well, she says, stepping over a pile of olive pits and what might once have been a hat. You raise an eyebrow. She grins. Only 2 people cried. That's a record. As night falls, the courtyard glows with fading lanterns. Someone strums a lyre quietly by the fountain. Ducks nestle in the shadows. The moon rises full and round, casting a silver sheen on the roof tiles. You sit on the steps of the granary, sipping the dregs of a forgotten wine cup. Your tunic is stained, your feet are sore, and your head hums with the buzz of too much, all at once. But you help make something happen today. Something loud, messy, imperfect, and deeply human. And for once, you didn't spill a single amphora. You wake up to the sounds of silence. Not eerie silence, luxurious silence. No one is yelling. No one is waving torches or thrusting brooms or demanding more barley mash for the ducks. It's the villa's rest day. Well, sort of. Once every 8 or 9 days, depending on the Nandini cycle, most villa laborers are granted a pause from their usual duties. It's not a full day off, this isn't a spa, but it's enough to sleep in a little, to sit longer over meals, maybe even to visit the nearby market if your name isn't already on someone's urgent to-do list. You sit on a sun-warmed wall near the herb garden, chewing a slice of bread with honey. It tastes like possibility. You make a list in your head, nap, laundry, your own, not the villa's, maybe some idle duck watching. Ambitious stuff. And that's exactly when someone appears with a small scroll and an apologetic expression. The Dominus requests a favor. Of course he does. You're reassigned, gently, diplomatically, to assist Mira with rest day maintenance. You are to help with duck massage duty. Duck massage. You stare at the scroll. This is a real thing? Mira shrugs. Apparently the Dominus read about it in a scroll from Alexandria. Claims it improves egg production. Also calms their little duck nerves. You blink. Ducks have nerves? Only when you touch them. You spend your supposed rest day chasing Prima around the pond with a sack of warmed grain and a handful of thyme oil. She bites. Rufus escapes. Crumb falls asleep mid-treatment. Mira says you have gentle thumbs. You're not sure that's a compliment. Later, you wander toward the stables. Galerius is rubbing ointment into a mule's sore flank. Can't rest if the animals don't, he mutters. And they never do. You nod. He hands you a comb. You stay an hour longer than planned. Some rest. You pass Livia near the kitchen, humming to herself while testing a new herb blend for oil. You call it a day off, she says, but the fire never really goes out. Cash is reorganizing the Dominus's jewelry box, just in case. Lucanus is correcting poetry scrolls with a red wax pencil. Even Calvus is scrubbing the lararium with what looks suspiciously like lemon balm and muttering. Rest day or not, the gods still expect offerings. You begin to realize the truth. In a place like this, rest is mostly about shifting gears. A lighter yoke, not an unhitched cart. You do get a small slice of solitude later, perched on the roof tiles above the courtyard, sipping wine from a cracked cup. You watch the villa from above. The distant figures. The steady rhythms. The way the light hits the pond just so. Ducks included. Historians still debate whether Roman villas provided genuine downtime for laborers or if it was a thinly veiled reassignment day. Most evidence points to both. Some workers likely used it to trade, visit family, or pray. Others just used the quiet moments to remember who they were beneath the dust. You spot Felix the potter's assistant under a fig tree, carving what looks like a tiny donkey out of clay. Antonia walks past without scolding him. That alone feels like a miracle. You eventually nap for 20 entire minutes. Glorious, uninterrupted sleep. Until a bee lands on your nose. Back on your feet, you help Marcia patch a tear in a bedsheet. She hums an old song about a sailor and a wine jug. You hum along. It's oddly comforting. Before dusk, the Dominus strolls past. He's relaxed, tunic loosely belted, sipping from a goblet. He sees you tending to the ducks and nods. Good. Keep them supple. You say nothing. You just smile. By sunset, you gather with others in the shadow of the fig tree. Bread, cheese, and dates are passed around. No one's in a hurry. No one's being yelled at. It feels like a gift, this shared, unscheduled exhale. You listen to stories. Cassia tells a wild tale about a haunted comb. Galerius swears he once met a talking cow. Mira insists that ducks do appreciate massages, they just hide it out of pride. You laugh. Not out of mockery, but because in this strange, demanding, endlessly exhausting villa, this is how you survive. Together. Through sarcasm, sweat, and oddly tender duck-related tasks. As stars blink awake, the torchlight flickers gently across walls worn smooth by centuries of feet, shoulders, and scrub brushes. You're tired. But it's a good tired. The kind that means you mattered today, even in tiny, ridiculous ways. You whisper to yourself. One day off, kind of. And tomorrow? Back to work. But tonight, for just a few hours, the world is soft. And now you finally rest. The villa lies quiet beneath a blanket of stars, the stone walls warm from the day's sun. Somewhere, a flute hums softly. Ducks nestle into silence, their feathers gently rustling like old parchment. Even the torches have softened, flickering like sleepy eyes closing for the night. You breathe in deeply, the scent of lavender, wood smoke, and something sweet from the kitchen that never quite made it to the table. You've worked. You've learned. You've laughed more than you expected. And maybe, just maybe, you've begun to understand what it means to belong to something older than you, woven into the rhythms of soil and sweat and supper. Tomorrow will come, with its tasks, its chaos, its chickens with attitude. But not yet. Let the stillness take over. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let the noises of the villa fade into a soft, distant murmur, like water moving in a stone fountain, like wind through olive trees, like footsteps in dust that never quite disappear. You've walked fields and hallways, duck ponds and dreamscapes. You've tasted ancient honey, dodged geese, polished silver, and maybe polished a few pieces of yourself along the way. You're safe now. You're here. And everything can wait. Close your eyes. The villa will still be standing in the morning. So will you. Good night, friend.